Live now to Labor leader Anthony Albanese alongside Jim Chalmers speaking in Melbourne ahead of Shadow Cabinet. Let's have a listen in.
Monetary policy couldn't do all of the job. And that's the context. We need action now. And some of the government's proposals, of course, are off in the never-never. What we have determined this morning to do is to propose a negotiating position to the government which would bring forward tax cuts faster for those who need it and, importantly, those who will spend it to stimulate demand in the economy. We've determined the following position. Stage one, of course, will continue to support that stage and express disappointment that the government has breached its clear commitment to bring in stage one by July 1. That was one of the very clear statements that they made during the federal election campaign. For stage two, we're calling for the government to increase for the increase of the 37% threshold from $90,000 to $120,000 that is already legislated but is down the track, to bring that forward to 2019-2020. This would provide up to $1,350 for all those above $90,000. The costing of that we've assessed to be less than $3.7 billion. That's based upon the government's own indications of what that would cost come 2022, when that change is due to come in under the already legislated tax cuts. So obviously the figure would be less than that figure. The third thing that we're saying is that infrastructure investment should be brought forward. This has been proposed by the Reserve Bank of Australia. We know that there are a range of road and rail packages that could be brought forward because they're ready to go right now. Projects including here in the southeastern suburbs of Melbourne, projects in the northern suburbs of Melbourne. The government could, of course, put money into a project like the Melbourne Metro, which is what we proposed during the election campaign in order to speed up the delivery of that project. But we're prepared to sit down with the government and identify projects, some of which were committed to by both sides of politics during the election campaign. But in the case of projects like Linkfield Road in Brisbane's northern suburbs, is due to commence around about 2027 in terms of actual shovels in the ground. We know that projects like that are necessary now, and we think that a bring forward of the government's proposed infrastructure investment would assist the economy, create jobs right now, help to boost productivity into the future. If the government is prepared to do that in terms of stages one and stages two, while deferring stage three's consideration to the following sitting of Parliament or whenever they deemed fit to debate it, sometime between now and 2024-2025, when it's due to commence, then we would facilitate the passage of those stages through the Parliament next week. We would facilitate the passage through the House of Representatives before question time next Thursday, given that Tuesday will be largely ceremonial and Wednesday's sitting will be devoted to the commemoration of Bob Hawke. So we think that these issues should be considered separately. We think that stage three, at a cost of some $95 billion down the track for an economy which is very soft at the moment, which no one can say what the economy looks like in 2024-25, is really a triumph of hope over economic reality. What we know right now is that the economy needs stimulus. And what we're looking for here is solutions rather than arguments. I've said, as I've gone around the country, that the country has conflict fatigue. They want to see us getting on with delivering real outcomes. This is a genuine approach by Labor, a constructive approach, and I hope that the government receives it as such. We've already had some discussions with the crossbench about supporting a proposal such as this, and I believe it would be a good thing for the country if we had unanimity across the parliament about a package such as the one that we're putting forward here today. I'll ask Jim to add to some comments.
Yeah, thanks very much, Anthony. The economy's floundering, families are struggling, and the government has no idea how to turn things around. And we in the Labor Party were very concerned, as Albo said, about the state of the economy. We're particularly concerned about two things, especially weak consumption, which, as the Reserve Bank has told us, is a product of having stagnant wages growth for so long. That's a key weakness in our domestic economy. The other problem we've got is we've had productivity growth go backwards for 4 quarters in a row under this Liberal government. So we've got a problem with consumption, we've got a problem with productivity. And what we are proposing today is a plan, a solution, or at least something that would help turn around those issues in the economy which are leading to the slowest growth for the 10 years since the global financial crisis. Under this Liberal government, growth is slower than it's been at any point in the last 10 years since the GFC. Now, the government's highest priority should be getting money into the hands of workers and flowing through the Australian economy. Unfortunately, so far, they've behaved as if their highest priority is stage 3 of the tax cuts, which comes with a $95 billion price tag and isn't implemented for another 5 years. Now, we do want to play a constructive role in helping the government to get this right, and so today we are proposing, with the agreement of our shadow cabinet, under Anthony's leadership, we are proposing a solution in good faith, and we ask that the government consider it and pick it up and run with it. We do support stage 1, as we have all along. We are prepared to support stage 2. We are arguing that part of stage 2 could be brought forward in a fiscally responsible way, in a way that doesn't jeopardise the forecast surplus for 2019-20 and the subsequent surpluses. We are calling for infrastructure investment to be brought forward to boost productivity, but also to try and get this economy going again. And as Albo said, if the government comes at this solution that we're proposing, we are prepared to get stages 1 and 2 through the parliament quickly when parliament resumes next week, if they agree to defer consideration of stage 3 to a subsequent sitting of the parliament. Now, it's true that we have shifted our position since the election. We've done that because, as Anthony rightly says, people expect us to do what we can to do the right thing by the economy. The test that we apply to economic policy: is it good for the economy? Is it good for Middle Australia? Is it right and responsible? And do we get bang for buck in the budget? Those are the tests that we will apply as we work through all of these issues in good faith. Before we throw to you for questions, it's worth commenting briefly on the speech that the Prime Minister's given in the West today about the economy and about red tape and industrial relations. And the point I'd make is this. If that's the best that the Prime Minister's got, it's no wonder that the economy's growing slower than at any point in the last 10 years. When we've got slow growth, we've got stagnant wages, we've got debt that's more than doubled on the Liberals' watch, all we're getting is more of the same rhetoric about unions and more of the same rhetoric about red tape reduction. And none of that has created a single job. If the Prime Minister and his government are serious about turning around this floundering economy, they will pick up the solutions that we are making today in good faith. They will get some infrastructure investment going sooner. They will get those tax cuts into the hands of workers and flowing through the economy sooner. That gives us the best chance of turning around the situation we find ourselves in as a country, where the economy is floundering, Middle Australia is struggling, and the government so far has no plan to do anything about it.
Thanks very much. Happy to take questions. No, we haven't. This is part of the point. We've been having this debate in theory for some time. What this is an opportunity for the government to do is to take on board these recommendations. When it introduces the legislation, I'd encourage them to introduce it in a form in terms of stage 1 and the revision that we have to stage 2 here, so that it can pass the parliament very quickly.
Why shouldn't it be seen that Labor's just capitulated?
Because very clearly what we're doing is putting forward a solution based upon the problems which are there. We have an economy that is slowing. We have said consistently that we support stage 1 of the tax cuts. What we're doing here is saying that with regard to stage 2, if the government brings forward the stage 2 tax cuts, the change in the threshold from $90,000 to $120,000, we think that would be good economic policy based upon what the economy looks like in June 2019. What we're also saying clearly is that stage 3 is a triumph of hope over economic experience and reality. We don't know what the economy will look like in 2024, 2025. To lock in $95 billion without the government providing for us the information that we've asked for, without them saying what are the cuts to services that might be required as a result of that $95 billion cut in revenue, is not economically responsible. So what we're doing here is being constructive. We'll continue to do that. One of the things that I've said that will characterise my leadership of the Labor Party is that I'm the Labor leader, not the opposition leader. I will work with my colleagues in an inclusive way, in a constructive way. You'll note some of the reports that were in the media aren't right. What we are doing is standing firm with regard to our position on stage 3, but we're also saying very clearly that we are prepared to act in the national economic interest. And that's what we're doing by having faster tax cuts and concentrating them in the area where people will spend them because of the nature of what happens when you give someone on a lower or middle income a tax cut as opposed to a higher income.
So if the government were to agree to the assent for consideration of stage 3, what then is your position on stage 3?
Well, we've said very clearly that it's economically irresponsible on stage 3 to pass legislation now for which won't occur until not just the next election, but potentially the one after that. We've said very clearly that the government can't be even confident of its own position, because if they were, they'd put forward exactly what the distributional aspect of those cuts would be, and they'd also put forward what are the cuts to services that might be considered necessary as a result of those changes.
That is the Leader of the Opposition, Anthony Albanese, with his Treasury spokesperson, Jim Chalmers, speaking to the media in Melbourne, putting forward an alternative tax proposal, saying that they'll do a deal with the government to bring forward the second tranche of tax cuts. They want some extra infrastructure spending and they want to defer debate on the third tranche of tax cuts.